And then red beat green, and Kanto was saved from smug arrogance. The end. Ash beat Gary. You know, there's your anime translation. What's going on? Oh man. It's been quite a few days lately. I hope everyone's doing so well and trying to make the world a better and safer place. I think that's the ultimate ambition from all of this. And I think one thing that's interesting about the start of things like the new year is, you know, when people make claimed resolutions and something that they want to do different, and you know, new year, new me, you know, and oftentimes at this point, especially with the internet, it kind of gets made fun of a lot. And so you know, you have to sit there and you have to ask what is something that's consistent about me that I don't have to change. And when it comes to consistency, what are things that are good and effective that I can keep at it, right? And I think that's interesting because I think consistency provides such a good framework for ourselves. And while it does do that, it also starts to reflect who we are as people. And I'm not just talking about in, you know, sports and player versus player competitive games, but in life in general. You start to go into a routine and you might become complacent. You might become complacent with what you have in terms of, you know, life itself. And I always thank my mom for instilling these thoughts into me at a young age, where I'm really appreciative to just live in a world that has running water, electricity on demand, and we live in a modern society where we get to be, you know, paid for working. Because before, you know, modern society, so it was a lot more violent. It's pretty violent now, but back then, you know, in terms of like tribalistic warfare and all that, I mean, it was pretty bad in terms of like just fighting to survive each day. You know, can I kill the saber-toothed tiger tonight to feed the whole tribe? But nowadays, the fact that I can just go drive down to Price Chopper and get a French silk pie whenever I want, that's a good life. So I don't want to be complacent on life's consistencies that have been granted to me. Again, running water, electricity, but they are nice things to have. You know, the fact that if I need to be hydrated, I can get water. If I want food, well, you know what? I can put a multivitamin at the bottom of that pie, and nutrition. But when we do stem over to PvP and sports and competition, which also kind of delves into the business world of competition, consistency is huge. You know, it is finding what works and then being able to repeat that cycle over and over. In the case of fighting games, you look at Street Fighter and there's characters like Ryu and Ken that are known to be consistently solid, consistently reliable. But what's interesting is because they're so consistent and they're the overall most popular characters in the series, people know how to fight against them pretty well. And the thing is, in fighting games, everyone presses buttons differently. So there is that kind of player input. So now that you have the power to change what buttons you press compared to what your opponent expects, how can you break past the normality of what your opponent thinks is consistency? And that's when you start diving into the world of risk and reward. And just because something's consistent doesn't mean it'll always work. In fact, life itself is going to throw you curveballs, and I hope you're ready to hit them out of the park, you know? And you know what? Getting to first base with just a hit when life throws you a curveball, that's pretty good. You're making progress. You're trying. I think sometimes people get so complacent and used to consistency in life that when a curveball does hit them, not only do they get out, but they throw temper tantrums. They throw fits. My good friend Austin Kent, many years ago, me, Michael Torres, and PJ Wallace went to visit him, and he's a really good Super Smash Bros. Melee player. And we had this discussion. He brought up on how when it comes to people not controlling their anger, you know, that's rooted in unmet expectations. So being able to rechannel your self-control when your expectations aren't met and being able to go, whoa, nice curveball. All right, here we go. That's huge. That's huge for just having a good mentality. And so that's kind of the ironic part, is nothing is truly consistent, in an ever-changing world. Now, of course, things can be extremely similar. Things can be, you could run, like, let's say in the Pokemon trading card game, there's, I remember in 2010, obviously there's a big deck with Luxray GL and Garchomp C. It was called Luxchomp, and it got a lot of good results all over the place. And you could take a deck list of Luxchomp, go to your own tournament, and you might be doing pretty well just from how consistent the list is itself. But just like a fighting game, you as a player have to press the buttons. In this case, make your actions. So there's a lot of different branches that path off based on what person is piloting the deck. And so what's ironic is, even if the deck gets a lot of results, it now has a big target on its back, because the consistency is also a big amount of knowledge for competitors. So you go to a tournament with Luxchomp, you're a new player, and all these opponents you play against, a lot of them are prepared for that deck. And are you prepared to adjust accordingly? And that's the interesting part about consistency, is ironically, when consistency needs to be adjusted itself. And again, it goes back to fighting games and PvP. In Street Fighter, I main T-Hawk in every game, and in Street Fighter 6, I main Lily, who's T-Hawk's apprentice. And, part of their big game plan is, can they get, their high damaging command grab? But also, they're really mobile, so there's ways that you can call out your opponent for trying to keep you out with, Hadoukens and Sonic Booms. And so the consistency thing here is me trying to gauge, okay, is my opponent going to consistently play like a lot of other people that want to keep me out? And is there things that I have prepared for that work? And it basically becomes, if so, then I keep my countermeasures going. But then if not, I'm gauging, oh, this player might be, how experienced are they? Oh, they're looking like they're adjusting to me mid-game. Wow, and that's often, an attribute of a skilled player, is you basically, just like life, you have a plan A, right? Wake up, get ready for work/school, go to work/school, come home, dinner, have some free time, go to bed, right? There's your plan A. Sometimes it, snows outside. Sometimes your boss might be away for a week and things are going to have to change for, whatever the agenda is at work. Or sometimes you find out a family member's hurt and you might have to leave for a bit. And so, again, when life throws you these curveballs, how can you keep pace? How can you keep adjusted? How can you maintain a good composure and maintain a good sense of self? And really, it really does dial back to life being just its own ball game. And I think, kind of like what Austin has pointed out, it's important to not to let unmet expectations control you. You have the bat. What are you gonna do? Keep at it in life for sure. And I say that a lot. I also say what T-Hawk says: humility is a virtue, and being able to reflect upon your actions and value humility as a virtue to learn and grow as a person is huge. Again, not just in games and sports, but in life itself. And it's a cool thing to see. Back to the Pokemon analogy of players that are adjusted to certain matchups in a deck, but they can adjust how they play against specific opponents. Just like in poker, they talk about having a poker tell. And ironically, a poker tell can sometimes happen because someone becomes complacent. They might, get the results they want, or they might be okay playing at poker. And so they don't think about things like, oh, I scratch my head when I have an ace in my hand, But the maladaptive player, the player that's always adjusting, oftentimes the top level poker players, they are adapting to whatever they're dealt, and they're being self-aware of their own potential tells. And I just think that that's just a case in PvP in general, and that's the case with making sure consistency doesn't stem into complacency. And, you know, that it's, there's often some players want to become nested. People want to become nested when things are in their control. And so again, when things are not in their control, they might start, you know, having anger baby fits. You know, why isn't this working? You know, but someone that is used to adjusting accordingly and values humility as a virtue, they might see a new game plan and be like, oh, okay, all right, let's see how I can, you know, adjust myself and try to hit the ball out of the park. So it really, it also, you know, when it comes to life, you know, I love the statement of cherish each day. And it's not just because I love this day and the other 6 days of the week, but you look at things like, you know, marriages and relationships that might not be working out well, and there can often be a root cause of people becoming complacent in a relationship and not appreciating maybe what they have, or appreciating each other, getting used to things that take work. And so I hope that, you know, for a better tomorrow, people learn to appreciate what's around them. It is pretty amazing that, by the way, this amazing cup that my barber made, Mega Man, I can just drink water, clean water when I want. And that's something worth living for in life. I love Mondays.